everyone, and welcome to Tap Into Your Creativity. We have an incredible interview today. My good friend and fellow artist, Robert Szot, is joining us for the second time to see all the new things that he has to tell us. There's a lot of things, and there he is. Hello, my friend. How
Good
are
morning.
you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long time.
I've actually lost track of time. I think like most people, I feel like it's been, but I couldn't tell you how long exactly. Nice to see you again. Thank you for having me back.
Of course. Oh my God, you are someone that I admire so much, and I love your work, and I love your practice and how you go about it. And it's for me, it's just a bonus to have you again here. I know that you're super busy, so I can't thank you enough for giving me the time.
Oh, look, it's my pleasure. I think what you're doing is incredible. Your interviews are always fascinating to me, and I admire your work quite a bit as well. So really, it's my pleasure.
Thank you, Robert. I can't believe it's been more than a year. You trusted me back when I started this, and you're one of my army of artists. And together, we've really done really amazing things. We've provided 300,000 meals for people in need.
I mean, I don't know what to say to that. It's incredible. And really, you should be commended for this. I know it's a lot of hard work and there's been a lot of hours that you put into this, but I mean, to do that amount of good for strangers, especially during this very difficult time for everybody, is really something. So you really should be commended for that. So congratulations. That's really great. It's really great.
Thank you. The other cool thing is that our book is coming out of all of our art that was sold. So I'm making a catalog and book, and it's coming out really soon. And I can't wait to share it with everyone and with all my artists. It's going to be amazing. Everyone who participated into Tap Into Your Creativity. So this is going to be really cool.
It's great how these things have longevity and they could take on a life of their own. And I think that's great that there's going to be documentation, and it'll be an interesting history to look at, you know.
Exactly.
300,000 meals. That's incredible to me, man. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I know. I'm actually slowing down a little bit. I'm not doing it every Saturday. I'm taking a little break. As you know, it's hard. It's a lot of work. And so
Sure.
I need time in my studio to paint as well. So anyways, Robert, welcome again. And for people that are joining us today that maybe didn't see our previous interview, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are now?
Well, I was raised in Texas. I'm actually from the East Coast originally. I was born in New Jersey, but left at a very early age and was raised in Houston. My father was an engineer, and he worked for an oil company down there. So I moved to Texas when I was around 3 years old. After going to college down there, I moved to New York City in the summer of 2001. To pursue my career as an artist. I never studied art. I never went to art class or art school. I got a degree in journalism of all things. And then I spent the next 20 years in New York trying to be a working artist, exhibiting my paintings there primarily at first, and then was able to expand my practice to galleries across the United States and in Europe over the last, I'd say probably 10 years. I still have my studio in New York City. I consider myself a bi-coastal worker now. I moved to Los Angeles just a little over a year ago now, right at the height of the pandemic.
Right after our interview.
It was, geez, again, I wish I had some sense of time, but I really don't. I think it's California that does that to you too. I think that all kind of sense of time in LA and in Southern California is, it's just really not something that has to be considered anymore. It's a little strange, but I moved to LA in October of last year, having been through the first year of the pandemic in New York City, and then came out to LA right when the pandemic was peaking out here in Los Angeles. Which is, I'm very well known for my auspicious timing, having moved to New York right before 9/11 and then with the pandemic. So I'm really batting 1,000 on that. So I've been in LA for about a year now. I've been working on projects out here in Los Angeles with a few different galleries here in LA and in San Francisco. And I'm enjoying my time out here on the West Coast. It certainly has been an interesting experience. I miss
What
New
made
York.
you move? What made you move to LA?
Well, that's a good question, and I think my answer is going to sound a little silly, but I've been with my partner Carrie for 10 years now, and she was in New York with me for most of that period, but she always wanted to come to California. She always wanted to see what it was like to live in California, in Southern California. And once the pandemic hit, and my brother was living in New York at the time as well, and he relocated to Portland. And so once he was out of New York, and Carrie was very anxious to travel west, I sort of ran out of excuses for staying in New York City, and so I thought I'll take her up on it. It's a bit of an adventure, and I thought, why not? And it's been quite pleasant. I'm trying to feel like I haven't retired. It's a much more relaxed attitude out here in California, so it's a little bit of an adjustment period, but I certainly have enjoyed the increased amount of space and the conveniences of not living in such a
did you
dense
find
city.
a studio, or is your studio at your home?
No, I found a studio right away. It was important for me to get right back to work. So I think it was within the first couple of weeks that I was here in LA that I found a studio and moved right in and just got back to business. It's
Do you
funny
feel,
because
yeah, I mean, it's a big difference from New York and being surrounded by, all the things that you knew, and then all of a sudden you were in this new studio. Did you feel isolated?
I think because of my practice, which meant that I was alone probably 95% of the day, no matter where I was. My sense of isolation is all but just dried up. I don't notice not being around people. I think my propensity to work and to want to work is so strong that I find, like, as long as I have four walls and a roof and my materials, I feel pretty much at home anywhere. So, and I feel bad for people, especially during the pandemic with all the lockdowns, because there was this great sense of isolation that everybody was feeling. But I particularly, or I personally myself, I don't know. I don't notice it. I don't know if that's a sad thing or if that's a beneficial thing. I'm not sure. I don't know how to weigh that, but I'm very happy working, and so working in isolation they sort of go hand in hand. So
Yeah, and you're someone who is so prolific in his art, and you are represented throughout the United States, and your practice has really helped you to continue in your path of success. So can you talk a little bit about how you were able just to continue that and to push now even more? Because I feel like now you expanded even more to the Southern California, San Francisco area, that maybe before you weren't so involved, and now, like, all of a sudden, you're there.
well, I think when I'm asked by other artists, particularly other artists that are just starting out in their careers, like, how do you get to where you're working full time and making a living as an artist, and you're taking projects that you want to take on, and you have the ability to say no to projects that you don't want to do, which I think is actually a really big step. I know it sounds a little esoteric, but I think the ability to say no to things sort of comes later on in your career, and it's a very important milestone. I feel like, just as a side note, I feel like setting up those boundaries and making sure that the projects that you take on are things that you actually want to do and that you're passionate about, and that really goes for anything, I guess. But the ability to kind of to weed through the ones that you don't want to do, and feel comfortable saying no to them, and not feeling like you're missing other opportunities. I think that's a real milestone in people's careers. But really, I think it all just comes down to your willingness to put the work in. I mean, I'm at the studio, I would say at minimum 6 days a week, you know, for 6 to 8 to 10 hours on end. And I think you have to work even through the quiet times, you know, and I think that's really the hard part, to stay motivated and to feel good about what you're doing, and to be ambitious, even though it feels like you're just working in silence and kind of throwing all of these things into a hole somewhere where they won't be seen by anybody. I think that self-motivation and being a self-starter and staying with it it's really tantamount to be able to do this at all. And I think at some point it becomes more of an issue that you're not really qualified to do anything else, you know, and you don't want to really, but I think the reality is that everything else kind of drops away, and it really just becomes about you and the work that you're trying to produce, and how much of it you can get done in your lifespan. I mean, somebody asked me what my greatest fear was the other day, and I had to think about it for a minute, and I really think it is that I just won't get all the work done that I wanted to get done. You know what I mean? It's you know.
So you talked about motivation. What happens when you're not motivated, but you still are going, right? Like you still are in your space.
Right. Yes. I think even if you don't do any work, I think just being in the space that you're creating in, and just sitting in there and spending time in there, even if nothing gets accomplished that day, I think it's important to always dialogue with whatever it is you're doing. And that dialogue can never really be broken if you want to be successful in completing something that is important to you. And so I think if you're not feeling motivated and you can't bear the thought of picking up a paintbrush or mixing another color, which, listen, I've been there, I'm there, you know, weekly. I think it's really important to show up and at least be present, because at the end of the day, there's really, for me anyway, like there's not a worse feeling than feeling like I didn't get anything done that day. And even if I just go to the studio and sit and stare, I go home feeling like, well, I've accomplished something. And I think that's important.
Do you write things down? Do you have it all here? How do you process what you have in here to actually put it on your canvas? Do you use that process of writing at all?
I don't pre-plan or go at painting with any kind of preconception of what it's going to look like. I don't think there's, you know, with my working process, I don't feel like there's any room for pre-planning. I think you're taking some of the velocity and some of the surprise out of it if there's too much like pre-gaming for these things. I've always let the work inform what I'm doing as opposed to me informing the work. And I think that's an important point to think about too when you think about showing up at the studio every day as well. It's that conversation, it's that dialogue that you're having with the work that's constant between you and the work, that then eventually that work is going to inform you what it wants you to do with it. And I think through that dialogue, like, answers sort of come to you and things unfold, and I think that's how the work gets finished. I don't know what sitting down and writing or thinking about what a painting is going to look like. I don't know what that would look like for me. I don't know what that would do to my work. I wouldn't know where to begin as far as planning. I'm not a great planner, if you haven't noticed that.
Well, you kind of are, because you actually made a book that it sold out. And so can you tell us a little about your book and how it all came about? I mean, it's fabulous. It's a lot of work.
That book for me, you know what it was? I had a computer full of, you know, images, not only paintings and works on paper, but images from exhibitions, stuff from 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was working in a dusty, unclimate controlled warehouse in Red Hook at the end of Van Brunt Street. And I thought it's almost a dawdle to just put it all together. It was all there in front of me. It was just a matter of just binding it all up. And again, I think it all comes from the fact that you're constantly working. Like this is what happens, right? You build up a backlog of a life that you've lived because you've just been working. And when you're working like that and you're not thinking about it, when you finally take a little bit of time to sort of look back and reflect, I think you'll be really surprised at the amount of things that you've actually accomplished in that time. It's not something you think about in the moment, which I think can lend to somebody feeling less ambitious and less excited about what they're doing. I think we're sort of getting onto something here. I appreciate this is more like a counseling session for me now, which is good.
I'm sorry, Robert.
No. It's great because look, I have a tendency to not think about the things that I've done, right? I'm always thinking about the next thing or not even the next thing. I'm on a track, just like, just straight, yes. No breaks, no turns, just straight ahead. Like that's just how I've conditioned myself now. But doing the book and like looking back at all these images and like being able to compile I don't know, it's like 200 pages worth of stuff that it made me feel great, first of all, to see that, like, in fact, I have done things that I can be proud of and that I should be proud of. And just walking around like a Luddite wearing the same clothes every day and not talking to people is, like actually something is getting done, which, was a great surprise to me. And I think maybe
by going back on your images, did you learn something new about yourself? Did you find something that, because this is you're documenting your life, right? So right. It's been many years of, painting and documenting, and now you're going back a lot of years. A lot of years. That must have been quite, really like you said, an awesome feeling. But also, did you learn something from going back?
If I think about it just on the surface, I think the one thing that really surprised me was I would look back on paintings and works on paper that perhaps were only a few years old, like maybe 3 or 4 years old. And to see the progression of where I was then to where I was now, that was really surprising for me. Because again, I think you don't notice little things like that. I've come out to California and I've been working on, paintings and works on paper like I always do. And I had a show in Dallas, which actually just closed this week. And a lot of the reviews that I got and the responses that I got was that, wow, like California's really affected your work and it looks really different than it used to. And like, California's been really good to you. And like, and I don't notice the changes in my work. If I do, they're very subtle things that I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I'm doing this now. But I think looking back at the book and like at older paintings that are, not that old, 3 or 4 years old, I think the progression, was very satisfying for me to see that, in fact, this thing has kind of developed over the years, and it's not something that I feel again in the moment, but having access to that archive was pretty telling.
So are you going to have that book available again?
Yeah, the printer had to really scale back operations because of the pandemic, and I'm hoping that they'll be able to ramp that back up. Because we're out of the back stock of copies of that book. I actually feel like I'm starting to get to a point now where I have enough new work to possibly put together another publication that maybe focuses on what I'm doing out here in California, and maybe talking more about like the differences in my work between working full-time in New York and now working full-time in LA. So it's something I've been thinking about. I've got a pretty full schedule this year. I've introduced some different aspects of my work with the hand-painted multiples and things like that. So, I'll squeeze it in there somewhere, maybe in the very late hours, who knows? I don't know.
So I love it. I think that, for people that are listening and they want to do something with their work, this is a great, awesome way to look back and have it like a physical copy in your hands, and
For
just be
sure.
able to
For
go
sure.
back and for referrals for yourself. It doesn't, you don't need to sell it, right? I mean,
Well,
obviously if you want to, but
listen, you don't need to
it's
sell
really
it.
great to have this portfolio and go back to it and just have a physical, because it's great to have it in the computer, but then you forget about it.
You do forget about it. You absolutely do. And I think the other thing is that I think it's very beneficial to provide it to potential clientele and to galleries as well. I think there's nothing more interesting than being able to see the lineage of somebody's work over a number of years. And I think that becomes of great interest to clients, where they can look at that lineage and decide, look, I want to be a part of that history. I want to take something out of that history and put it in my home and live with it. And I think a book goes a long way in showing a physical representation of that lineage. And I think galleries are the same way. I think one of the things that you have to prove to a gallery is that you're a serious artist and that this is something that you're doing for the long term. They don't want to invest in somebody that's just doing it as a hobby or that is going to be quitting it next week. They want to be able to see from point A to point wherever we're at now that this is something that you're serious about and that you're invested in. And I think that makes a gallery more willing to invest in you. So,
And
I
you
definitely,
you had a catalog that you printed like a year ago,
yeah,
and I actually bought one because I absolutely loved it, and because I loved it so much, I decided to make my own catalog.
sure.
And it really is important. I think it's important for yourself to validate everything that you're doing and
Yeah.
to show your clients and galleries. It's a great way to present yourself.
And I've been super flattered because a lot of artists end up buying those publications, like you ended up getting one yourself, and they're using them as reference materials, like I do with art books myself, and I feel really grateful for that. It was rather unexpected, and it's one of those things I'm just very pleased about that. And so thank you for getting it, and thank you for referencing it and talking about it. And I don't know. I think what I'm doing is important, and it's very gratifying to think that other people can look at it and get
A
something out of
hundred
it. So
percent. It has the trickle effect. I
yeah,
think that, that if you can help others to be inspired, and I think your work and the way that you go about it is very inspiring, at least to me. I feel very inspired by your work. And I do feel a little change on your work just from the images that you were posting lately. But maybe it's just because you just mentioned it. But you have that big monochromatic big space that you always have.
hmm
And now you're kind of bottling up all your figurative, organic, ethereal in like jars that you call them, even jars, right?
oh well, recently, when it gets okay, I'll let you in on like a little. Maybe this is TM. I don't know. I'll let you in on it.
Bring it,
This
bring it.
the I don't need a fancy studio space to work in, right? I mean, I like having a big space and having air conditioning, and then I like all that stuff, but I don't need it. Okay, and so when I got to LA, like the first place I landed, like was a studio space that's very close to where I live, and it is big enough for me to work in, and I can afford it, and it has no air conditioning in it. Okay, like it's not temperature controlled at all, which is okay for most of the year out here in LA, right? It's not bad. But come, summertime, it gets pretty hot, right? And so on those very hot days, I end up working at home, right? I got like a little room in my house, and I end up setting up a little table, and I do works on paper here. Now, the reason I'm kind of telling you all this is that what's come out of that is that recently, over even the last couple of weeks, I've been doing these little works on paper that are much more figural than things that I normally do on canvas. And when I say figural, I'm basically doing what I do, but I'm encompassing it in what I consider to be a vessel or a jar. And I mean, I don't really know how to talk about them outside of them. I just think they're kind of whimsical and they're fun, and like I've really been enjoying them. And I never thought that I'd be like purposefully creating something that looks like something else, but there's just been something kind of fun and satisfying about the work. But yeah, I know what I know what you're talking about. Oh
Because
yeah.
it's so, it's like, so I'm going to describe it, and or maybe you should describe it. You
Well,
go ahead and describe
it
it.
all it all started out
Unless
really
you have something there that you can show us.
well. There was a painting I did many years, not many, but like 3 years ago. And it was a painting called Heavy Set, which was in the Anita Rogers Gallery exhibition I did back in 2019. And that had this sort of amorphic kind of jar shape to it. It was kind of blobbish, and I really liked it. I was really fascinated by it. It had the outline around it of, it was red, and I think these vases and these jars that I'm doing now are just an extension of that particular painting. I have one. Let me just go grab it.
Good, because that way people can see what we're talking about if you're not familiar with the latest work.
It's like this right here. You see that?
Yeah.
And so that's a monotype collage with crayon and gouache on paper. And, it just got a funny little jar shape to it. And I just, there's something that's, you know what it is? It feels very complete to me. And here's, like, this is a good example too. This is the most recent hand-painted multiple that I've done.
Oh, yes.
That they're printing right now. And so This was based off of a work on paper that I recently completed that kind of fits into that jar series.
What material did you use for that?
For the hand-painted multiple?
Yeah.
That is a 3-color serigraph with hand painting. So all the color on there is me painting with gouache. So I think the hand-painted multiples are interesting things to talk about, because I never thought about doing multiples. Like, my work was entirely about singularities and entirely just about one-offs. And I really wanted to keep it that way. But I got to LA and I hooked up with a very prominent print shop out here, Modern Multiples. And we discussed doing an edition of one of these works. And I told them straight off, I said, listen, I'm interested in doing an edition, but I don't want it to be something that gets just printed out of a computer, right? Like, I want it to be unique. I want my hands to be on it. I want it to be a process, right? Like, I want it to be a piece that's like someone could point at and say, look, I know that he was directly involved in that.
Right.
And so the idea of hand-painted multiples came up. And essentially what that entails is I give them an image of a work on paper that I've done that I want to do multiples of. They do a hand-pulled silk screen of the outline of that image on a very nice piece of cold pressed watercolor paper, like really nice. Like, that's really great. I'm a materials guy. I love this paper. It's so good. Anyway, so they
what's
give that
the name?
outline.
What's the name of the paper? Do you know?
Saunders. It's 400 gram. It's like a 400 gram Saunders cold pressed watercolor paper.
So it has a tooth, right?
It's I don't think it's very thick, and it's
okay.
You know what? I'll get you. It's so great. It's
get
great.
me that.
Great.
Yeah.
So anyway, they send this outline to me of this work that they hand pulled what they call a ghost silk screen on, and then I go in and I paint over it with watercolors, or not watercolors, with gouache, and then I bring that colored ghost back to the print shop, and then they hand silk screen a darker gray layer on it, and then the black on it. And so all the black gets filled in, all the black lines get filled in, but all that coloring on there is all hand done by me. And so
I love that.
It's such a great process.
Wow.
I love working with the print shop. I get so excited doing these things because they're all unique. Each edition is a unique work because it's all hand done. But I can offer them to people at a lower price point, and what they end up getting, I feel like, is a really high quality original piece of art. That I mean, I don't know.
Do you number them? Do you do
like
1 to 40 and you number them?
I do the edition of 40. They typically have 5 or 6 artist proofs, and then that's it. Then after 40, they're gone. So I think the scarcity is there, and I think the handwork is there. I think the effort is, and it hit all of the check marks for me. And I really love doing them, and it's fun because I get to hang them up, and I have 4 of them now, and it's like, oh, I just really like to kind of see them all together, and like, I don't know, it's been a
And
really exciting.
were they successful? Did they sell really well?
They've been very successful, and I'm very grateful to people that buy them. I know people that have collected each one of them, so they have all 4. Well, the 4th one is in production right now.
How big are they?
This new one is 23 by 20, so like it's a sizable
Oh,
work.
yeah.
And it's got color and it's got velocity, like one of my paintings has in it, and I don't know. It's just one of those things that
So
I
can you
no idea.
show us again the one that you just put down, so
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
point to us the color that you added and then what
Yep.
they did? I think it will be
So
easier to see it.
this is the test proof of this one. So
Okay.
all of the bright color that you see in there is all hand applied with gouache. So all of like this red and this yellow and the pink, like that's all my painting on there. All the black that you see on there is the silk screen. And then there are some lighter gray elements that have been silk screen on there as well. And so this one is, see, they're all signed at the
Yeah.
bottom. And this one
I
is,
love it.
and
Oops.
it's just, oh, what? You okay?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
I'm
there we
sorry.
go.
And so like this was, I feel like I'm doing show and tell in my,
Yes, I
know.
love it.
So this was the first one that I did, right? So this
Yes.
was based off of that painting heavy set that I referenced earlier. And so this was the very first one that I did over the summer in LA. And it's actually pretty similar to the new one. So I think of them as sister pieces, really.
I like that because then they talk to each other. I
Yeah.
actually like that a lot.
It's great to have them both hanging up together and just
I have a
having all 4 of
question
them.
that someone asked. How did the phenomenon of layering emerge in your work, and how would you say it has changed over time?
And I don't know if a lot of people know this because I don't really talk about it perhaps as much as I should. But when I first started painting, one of the painters that I was really fascinated with was Egon Schiele. I had gone to Italy with my brother right around 2000, and I saw the work of Egon Schiele for the first time. He was a German expressionist painter at the turn of the 20th century primarily. And he was mostly known for his figurative drawings, like pencil drawings with gouache and watercolor, like miles away from what I do. But what I really took from him was a lot of the backgrounds of his paintings look like my abstract paintings. And I think I've taken a lot from him, from those paintings. If you look up, there's a particular painting that I always reference. It's called Agony by Egon Schiele. And it's a picture of him and Gustav Klimt dressed as monks. I know it sounds a little strange.
Oh my God, I gotta look for it.
It's a great painting. And I want you to try and notice the background, especially. And I think you'll see a lot of his influence in my work now. I think especially with the blending of colors and the way I've been softening the borders between elements on my paintings now. I think if you look at work I'm doing now as opposed to work I've done 2 years ago, I think the thing you notice the most is that there's almost a blurring of lines, a bit more softness between
Yes.
This red and this blue.
Yes.
And I think his work and his influence has had a lot to do with that. I'm sorry, what was the first of that question?
Well, that you were most influenced by, I'll read it again, but
Okay.
It's how did the phenomenon of layering emerge in your work, and how would you say it has changed over time?
Okay, so we got to the change part, right? So
Yeah.
I think the borders are a bit softer. Now, I think
Yes.
in terms of layering, I think the thing I'm most fascinated with, and I think the thing that I keep coming back to in other artists' work, is I like the sense of mystery that layering colors offers, but then kind of stripping away that top layer, even just a little bit to reveal like the paint that's underneath that layer. I think not only does that add a bit of mystery to a work, but there's a depth that it creates as well. And so for me, the other thing I really like too is that I think somebody pays more attention to a painting. I think they become bonded with it more tightly. when the painting doesn't reveal everything at once. And I think that layering of paint like that, and the kind of scrubbing away top layers, I think it offers the viewer a chance to kind of go a little further into the work to uncover those sort of mysterious areas, and it becomes a much more interesting piece to them, or at least to me. And then I think it's that kind of interest in that bonding that I think people will keep coming back to time and time again. I think a lot of the layering is sort of me conveying that mystery, or at least trying to.
And I think you leave also history behind it, right? So it's like,
Sure.
what was there? You know, so
I
you start
love to
questioning
see
that. Like,
I love to see
what
work.
was
I
there?
want to see the work that's gone into it. I want to see the trail that somebody's left. It gives me a much greater sense about who that person is, or who that person was, and what they were trying to accomplish. If I could see where they've sort of begun and like where it's ended up, and if you can get all that in one canvas, I think that's really a remarkable thing. There was speaking of Gustav Klimt, there was a painting that I saw of his once, where it was like, you know, all the sort of beautiful portrait of a young girl and the flowers and all the colors. But then if you look at the bottom left, or I think it was the bottom right of the painting, her foot was unfinished. Like, it was just like line drawings, and there was no paint on there. And I don't know if that was deliberate, or if maybe he just didn't get back to it before he died. But there was just something so great about it, right? Like, there was a layer that you would just never see in a Gustav Klimt painting. But like, there it was, just like this kind of crudely drawn foot. And I thought, wow, that's great. Like, that's something I wanted, you know what I mean? Like, I thought, oh, I really would like to have
Well,
that.
it's like
so
breadcrumbs, right? It's like
Sure,
breadcrumbs, and you
sure.
go from here to here to here, and then
Yeah,
it just makes sense. And
and yeah,
so it's important to have that little bit of mystery, and just, you know, and a little bit of history.
I agree. And again, I think it comes back to that dialoguing with your work constantly. I think that is a direct result of never breaking that conversation that you're having with the work that you're doing. Even if you're, I almost cursed there, sorry. Even if you're sick to death of it. My mouth is
That's
so
okay,
bad.
Robert. It could be you. You could be you here.
Even if you're sick to death of it, I think you have to sit down with it. You just do. You have to it is a constant conversation with whatever it is you're doing.
I saw you ripping one of your prints,
Yeah.
and I'm dying. Why did you do that?
It was to preserve the integrity of the edition, as the printer told me. It was a print that had not run correctly. It wasn't like there was anything terribly noticeably bad about it, but what they call the registration was off just a little bit. So meaning, like, the black wasn't
Rob,
like sitting
you
just
should
right.
have thought of Sandra. Send it to Sandra.
Well,
She's
no. They
that.
wouldn't let me take it out of there. I had to destroy it because it wasn't like, you have to keep the integrity of the edition. The 40 is it. Like, you have to draw a line under it. And unfortunately, that one just didn't make the cut. And then I ended up posting it online, just sort of funny. And I thought, well, I will explain what I'm doing, because I don't think people have gone, you know, I don't think I've gone nuts out here in California. And maybe I have. I don't know. But I was really surprised that, like, the sort of, I mean, like, people weren't angry or anything, but I got a lot of that. Like, why are you doing this? Like,
Well, it was just like, it was like, it hurt my heart when I saw it.
It was really cathartic for me. I think it added years to my life, to be honest with you. I thought, this is great. I'm going to destroy everything.
So what did you do with it? Did you just trash it, or are you using it as collage? Or
no, they shredded it. No, they shredded it. Yeah, they did.
Got it.
Excuse me. I think
So
it's not COVID. I'm vaccinated. I don't have COVID, guys. I had COVID. I had COVID. I don't have it. I'm good.
You had COVID?
Yeah, about a year ago I had it.
In LA?
When I got to LA, I avoided getting COVID the entire time I was in New York City. And I come to LA and I get it like a month after being there.
Were you okay?
Yeah, it was fortunately not terribly bad for me. I mean, I felt it, certainly. But I mask, I wash my hands constantly. I don't go out. I don't see anybody. I ended up getting COVID because I had one of those hand sanitizers that got recalled for not having enough alcohol in it. And I was using it when I'd go to grocery store, and I have it in my car, and I'd wash my hands in the car, and I think, oh, I'm great. And I probably shoved like a bunch of chips in my mouth or something, you know, like I do. And I'm sure that's how I got it, just because I had a bum hand sanitizer. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
crazy,
Rob,
right?
crazy. actually crazy.
Yeah, really crazy.
Rob, tell me how you found your language, your Robert Szot, your paintings that have a dialogue between each other. How did you find the rhythm? How did you find your language?
Um, it, I think if there is like an answer to that question, I mean, other than being just really dedicated to the thought that I can do whatever I want, like that I'm capable of doing anything, and just sticking with that mentality, whether it's true or not. Um, I think if there is an answer, it's that uh, I'm always keenly aware of the authorship of my work and wanting to ride a line between making sure authorship is tantamount. Like you can look at a painting and say, that is
Recognizable.
a
Yep.
Robert Szot painting. Riding a line between that and having variety in your work. I don't want to be a one note person. Like I don't want all my paintings to look the same, even if if it's a recognizable element, which I know people like, and they like to be able to say, oh, that's so and so's painting because it has a particular shape in it that they repeat every time. It's not something I was ever really interested in doing. I like having variety. I think it keeps the work fresh, not only for the people that are looking at it, but more importantly, like it keeps it fresh for me, not being in a cycle of repetition all the time. So I think always being very conscious of keeping authorship and having variety. I think it is a real heady mix of that will always produce individual work. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
Certainly because I think if you become known for something, and let's say you've been very successful, I think it's really easy just to kind of continue just whipping that horse until it's over, right? But I look at people like Philip Guston as a great inspiration to me, because here's a painter that became extremely famous for his abstract works, and grew so tired of it that he started painting Ku Klux Klan members beating each other up over a bottle of booze. I mean, and I think he did it beautifully, and people were absolutely horrified when he came. I think it was in '69 at the Marlborough Gallery where he first exhibited those figurative paintings that he did, with God's hand coming down from the sky, or him sleeping in a bed in the studio, or like just
He
a
was
bowl of
rebelling
cherries.
with his own work.
Right. And he felt like it didn't matter what the response was going to be, but the impetus was something that was inside of him. And he was like, it doesn't matter. You know what it was? It conveyed the sense of someone having to do something. And I love the fact that he did it despite, the immediate consequences were terrible. But if you look at that work now, I think, especially in conjunction with his old abstract paintings, it is such a complete picture of somebody that as soon as I knew that about him, I wanted to be that. I wanted to be that for myself. And there's no reason to be an artist if you don't think that way. You know what I'm saying? Like this is your great independence, right? This is your revolution. Like this is your statement that you're making. So don't box yourself in with somebody's idea about what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, I think that's the very basis of what you call my language. I feel like being an individual and maintaining my individuality and having variety in my work and doing what I want with it is really important. And again, I hate to keep talking about it, but like not breaking that conversation, right? Like,
right.
Your work becomes who you are because you're constantly dialoguing with it. And once you break down any barriers between who you are and your work, that variety and that authorship and all that stuff all comes together. Now, look, I mean, it takes time. There's no question about it. And it takes a lot of serious effort. Like you have to be in the studio working. Like there's no question the work needs to be done. But it needs to be done from the right perspective. And I think thinking like that and continuing that dialogue with whatever it is you're doing, I think will give you that perspective.
I love that answer.
That was
great.
A good answer, dude.
That was a good answer, Rob. Woo! Kudos.
Wow.
So, oh my God.
I am so smart, dude. It's unbelievable.
You'll come back and listen to this, and you'll be happy
and just
about
go,
this.
oh my God, I can't believe I said that.
No, it's. I think it's inspiring, and I think that I love how you put the two and two together and how it works for you, and it makes it very unique. And I think that it's important for for artists to know. Because you use your same hand and you have the same strokes, and you can use that in different ways, but still knowing that it's a Robert's piece.
Right. And I think you when I say you, I mean me, like what you're doing, and know what that thing looks like. You know what I'm saying? You know what that completed thing looks like and what it feels like. Yes. And if it doesn't feel like that, even though you've been working on it forever, you got to go back into that thing. You have to edit. I'm the biggest fan of people that edit their work, and you have to edit until you know it's that thing. As Lauryn Hill puts it in her album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, it's that thing, right? It's that thing. Some people
we have another question here. Oh no, I'm going to open the comments back up. So if you have any questions for Rob, this would be a perfect opportunity. But also you did a miniature paintings for this really cool project that you were involved in. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that? That was really cool.
There is this real kind of ground zero kind of art project out in New Mexico, and I had not heard of it before. This guy Eric runs it. New Mexico Creative, I think is his handle on Instagram, and he had put a diorama of the MoMA, like a room at the MoMA in New York, out in the middle of the desert, right? Which I know, it's fascinating. And the program is that artists are welcome to come and take stuff out of it that they like, and then put miniatures of their own work back into it. And I thought, well, that's great too, because you have this revolving exhibition. And I thought, oh, I really want to get on board here. I want to just see what my paintings would look like in miniature. So I got in touch with him and I said, listen, I want to do this. I think it's fun. And I put together, I think it was 4 works, which I took like a little piece of balsa wood and I glued some acid-free paper to it. And then I did 4 original little works on paper. And then I went to the
They're
coffee
like
shop.
This big, you guys. Like,
yeah,
literally
like
yeah, teeny.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to the coffee shop and I asked for some of those wooden stirrers, and then I framed the little works, and I sent them to Eric out in New Mexico, and he was like, listen, I want to put these in, but I don't want people to take them. And I said, well, listen, why don't we auction them off? You pick the charity, and we'll auction them off, and we'll just give the money to whatever charity you pick. And he picked this. There's an art school out in Albuquerque that is there for the benefit of underserved and underprivileged children in the area, to teach them art and the benefits of art in their lives and possibly even as a career. I said, that's great, let's do it. And they sold, and we made a donation to the charity, and it was really. It's funny you bring that up, because it wasn't that long ago, but I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, I thought it was such a cool concept, because it's like something floating in the middle of nowhere,
and then literally in the middle of
nowhere. So if you want to just take a peek of what we're talking about, go to Robert's page and just scroll down, and then you're going to see it. And it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed that. That was a fun project. And look, I'm a big proponent of going outside of yourself with your work. If you can afford to
Yes.
make donations, if you can afford to put your work into charitable auctions, and listen, there's a great benefit to your career there as well. Because let's say you're trying to get noticed in a community, but people don't know your work. If you donate a piece to an art auction, that piece gets picked up, money goes to the charity, that piece ends up in somebody's house, and then the dialogue begins not only with the person that work is in the house, but other people see it, and so your work is out into the world. So if you can afford to do it, and I know that's hard, that's a hard thing to do, but if it's something you can afford to do, certainly I would recommend it. It literally is a win-win, I mean, all the way around for something like that.
I have another question from you, from my friend Rena. She is saying, much of Rob's art is full of saturated color. Will he please talk about that a bit and how he achieves cohesion and balance?
I think that saturation comes from probably not really knowing what I'm doing. What I mean by that is that when I first started painting, my understanding of materials, my understanding of paint application, it was zero. I mean, I really didn't know anything about it. I mean, I've probably eaten more chemicals, you know, especially in those early years, because I just didn't know. Geez, I mean, how do you talk about saturation of color though? I find it a little bit difficult.
Because I think it's like, how do you balance and how do you get it all, you know, because you use primary colors a lot.
Sure.
And sometimes they're really saturated.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance the saturation with the desaturation in your work? Sorry.
No,
Rob.
no. I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. No, it's a good question, and it's one I wish I had a ready answer for. I mean, I just think about I'm trying to go through the steps of how I work and like what are the sort of the pillars that I always go to when I'm working, and I think one of them, and this may go towards somewhat explaining or maybe answering this question, is that I really, the first thing I want to do when I'm working on a painting is I want to cover that entire canvas. Now, when I say cover the canvas, I'm not talking about doing one color or doing some sort of ground or some background color on there. I'm talking about doing lines, blocks, shapes, but
mark making.
And if you look at one of my paintings in the early stages, they all look the same and they're all very chaotic, and they make very little sense. They don't make any sense to me. Some people seem to enjoy those early stages and they're like, oh, it's done, like you should, and I think, because it just doesn't, you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel cohesive and it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think once that painting is covered, it becomes more about solving problems of composition and of color balance, right? That's when I really start thinking about, okay, I like this particular section of the painting that I've done so far. What can I build on that section that can respond to it, but also build the painting out as a whole, right? So you look at a section and you're happy with, you know, the way that white and that purple and that orange kind of interact with each other. So then you kind of build up around it. But you can't keep things that don't feel like it's satisfying the painting. So let's say you are building up around that section of the canvas, but all of a sudden that section that you're building up around becomes problematic with the rest of the canvas. You have to be able to go in and edit that part out, no matter if you really fell in love with it or if it was really something that helped you build the painting from the start. If it's not working, it's got to go. Like that editing process is really key in completing one of these things correctly.
So when you add the color or the very saturated section of the color,
yeah,
do you have a section and then you respond to that, or the best come? is it I guess I don't know how to
I
ask
feel like
that,
maybe
but
it is kind of like almost like a blast radius
yes,
concept where
yes,
you start at that
right,
ground zero, at that middle
right.
point, and then you kind
And
of
then
start
you start,
building outward. But then it'll end up collapsing in on itself again, and then it does it again and again and again. And like that is a process that I go through, dozens of times when you're working on a painting. Now, that process may get larger, right? As the painting sort of starts to spread out a little bit and become more complete, it may get more toward the edges. But you may come in the next day and just think, oh, you all right?
yep, I just have two more questions that I
Oh,
would
okay.
like to get into.
Sure.
Have you ever deleted Instagram posts or your previous artwork because you thought they were too different from what your language is now? So I guess, uh, I don't know.
I
Is that
don't
even a,
I don't think I approach Instagram like I approach everything else. Like it's okay for me to make mistakes, right? It's
yeah.
okay for me to more than occasionally embarrass myself with something, to feel like, oh, that should never have gone out. Um, I think it's okay to feel that way and let those things out into the world. Look, I think I think you have to live your life as an individual, and you have to
Yes.
forgive yourself for making mistakes as an individual.
Yes.
When
And
people
she said
talk,
she understood you, by the way. She understood, Rena understood your answer. So that's thumbs up for you.
oh, okay, good. Thanks, Rena. Sorry. Look, if you're in LA, come by the studio. Honestly, like I love opening myself up to people. Like if people have questions, if people want to know things, like I like making myself available to people.
So
I
there's
enjoy
another
I enjoy it.
question actually for you. How
Yeah.
many works would you say that you are on currently, or currently at one time painting, sketches, works, paper collage? Do you move from one to another?
I feel like if I'm working on too many things at once, not only do I get a little confused about where things are in terms of progression, but then I end up feeling like they all kind of end up looking a bit too similar to each other, right? Like, because you tend to kind of look at a paintbrush and think, oh, it's got like a lot of gray on it, so I'm going to kind of keep it gray and I'm going to move on to the next one. Like, so I try to keep things to like one painting at a time and one work on paper at a time. But
that is so interesting to hear that,
yeah.
because a lot of people do it the opposite.
Yeah, my brain doesn't work that way. Like I feel again, I mean, if we have a theme in this interview, it's about the conversation, right? It's about the dialoguing. And if I am in a painting and I'm dialoguing with that painting, like I can't be interrupted with another conversation. I just can't. I have to concentrate. I've been working on this painting at the studio right now. It's a 78 by 65, I think, something big like that. And I've been working on it for months now. And I'm desperate to get it finished because I have three major exhibitions lined up this year already. And it's like, I've got to get onto other things. Like I have to. But I just won't allow myself to do it. I have to finish this painting. It's driving me up. It's driving me nuts. But yeah, so I tend to keep things to maybe one or two at most at a time. It really depends on what kind of pressure I'm under in terms of getting work done.
So no matter if you're working on a series, you wouldn't work multiples. You will still
Well,
work one
well,
at
I
a
think
time.
I think it's all a series, right? It's
Well,
my life
true,
series, right?
true.
So I don't group paintings into to specific series. I mean, some may have similar titles or the same titles. I think it's just because that's what it struck me as, and but they're not ever grouped into like, these 5 paintings are part of this series or not. Like I'm basically just, it's all just, it's the Rob Szot series, you know, from now until
Yeah,
I'm
I love it. I
finished,
love it.
right?
So before we go, because we only have like 2, 3 more minutes, what are your top tips for emerging artists
Hmm.
and for established artists?
Um, Top tips. Okay. I think the first one is I think you should continue to have confidence in yourself. I think you should move forward confidently. Know that mistakes are coming. Know that there are going to be low points that are coming as well. Um, you just have to work through these things. I think the thing that has kept me, kept this sustainability going for me is that there is a core belief I have that this is something that I'm meant to be doing, even if it goes nowhere and no one ever sees it. It does something to me, like it provides a satisfaction and a purpose for my life, for me. And you should wrap your entire life around that purpose, right? And never abandon it, because I can't imagine how useless I would feel if I didn't have that. So move forward confidently. I think if you're looking for
you
some
got to
more,
go quick, Rob.
oh, sorry, if you're looking for some more usable advice, look, publications for sure. Go to the studio every day for sure. Damn, I didn't know that we were on a clock.
I know, I didn't either. Like the hour went so quickly. I can't even
talk to artists. Reach out to people. Galleries don't love it when you cold call them or reach out to them indirectly. So go to the gallery, go to shows. Don't go to somebody else's show with your work in your own hand and don't do that. Go to the show, introduce yourself to people, talk to people. Don't talk about yourself at somebody else's show, but get to know the people that run the gallery, get to know the artists that they show at the gallery, and introduce yourself, not necessarily as an artist, but just somebody that, hey, I enjoy what you're doing. I'm here to support what you're doing, and build that relationship that way, because cold calling galleries, I'm telling you, it doesn't work. So
I love it.
Don't waste time.
Rob, thank you so much. We might have to do a part 3, my friend.
Sure, of course.
So,
listen, I mean, I always have time for you, of course.
I love it. Thank you for being my friend and an inspiration, and thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for all you're doing. I think this is an incredible project, an incredible journey that you've been on, and I'm very flattered to just be a part of it. So thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye, Rob.
Bye.